Hey, friend, it's so good to be here with you. I'm Charlene Shire. In these next few episodes of the Becoming Home podcast, which is a project from fullyabundantlife.com, where you can find me talking about health, wealth, relationships, all kinds of things going on there. We've got a free guide on emotional processing and things like that. So run on over and check that out. Book a call if you need to. But the Becoming Home podcast is a project that I do with my daughter-in-law, Joellen, and you'll see her in a minute if you're watching on YouTube. If you're just listening, you'll be hearing her chime in. But through April and May, we've been talking about April showers, bringing May flowers, and just wanting to really rethink this idea of darkness. And what does it mean to be going through times of darkness? And do we need to be feeling bad? Like I used to always feel bad about feeling bad. In a heavy religious system, it was not, I didn't feel like I was allowed to feel bad. Like I wasn't fixing my eyes on Jesus. I wasn't being spiritual enough. I was stuck in some kind of sin or something like that. That's why I was feeling dark or something. And having come out of that, I'm learning so much more about what darkness really is, what these times of darkness can be, and how much light is actually in there that no one could ever show me before. And so we've taken April and May to unpack some of these ideas. And in April, Joellen and I shared quite a few very vulnerable, very personal, dark times that we have faced in the last just handful of years. And those moments where it really feels like the shadows are closing in, but there's so much more that can be done in that time than just sitting and overeating, right? And not moving our bodies and getting depressed. These dark times can be super transformational if we let them. We just need to know how to get in there. We need to build up the skills and the tools to navigate through those dark times, plant solid seeds that are going to grow beauty in the time to come. Like the scripture says, there's weeping now, but there's beauty in the morning, or something like the joy in the morning. That's what it says. So this was a 2-hour long conversation that we've split up into 4 parts. We'll release a part each week throughout the month of May. And it will really just kind of talk you through and help you kind of identify some of those key tools and skills that we can use. But if you're wanting to kind of go back and hear more of the foundation of what we're talking about, I'd encourage you to go back to April's episodes. They are in order, same thing, long conversation that we broke up into parts. So you'll want to go back into April and start with part 1 and work your way forward. But we're all about holding space for real and vulnerable conversations. We're talking about mental health. We're talking about emotional health. We're talking about healing from trauma, embracing different generational perspectives, right? Because my generation dealt with things differently than today's generation does. And so we're trying to hold space for each other, but we're also trying to hold space for other people who need help kind of navigating some of those dark times and some of that trauma. So if you are on your healing journey, looking for support, tools, you're in the right place. So stick around as we explore some of these things and figure out how to turn our darkness into daylight, one conversation at a time.
Yeah, I really liked what you brought up earlier while we were kind of pre-discussing about this idea that you had read about of where it said the words, turn your eyes upon Jesus, or no, fix your eyes on Jesus, and how you'd kind of had a reaction to it of like, bleh, bleh. And so, yeah, because I've walked, I don't want to say I've walked that road, because I still feel like I'm walking that road. I don't feel like I'm ever going to stop walking the road of rewriting my religious neural pathways of being able to hear these phrases that I heard a lot. And but anyway, you'd read this phrase, fix your eyes upon Jesus, and how you kind of went in prayer forward in the book and ended up receiving this new idea of, instead of fix your eyes on Jesus, meaning kneel before the cross, because there's literally a hymn. Fix your eyes on Jesus, look at his like wonderful face. And it talks, it's basically literally like, oh, you should stand in awe
Turn
of.
your eyes upon Jesus. Is
Yeah.
that one?
Yeah, that
Look
one.
full in
His
his
wonderful
wonderful
face.
face.
And the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. I'm so glad we remembered that. I didn't think I could do it.
It's a great song.
It is. I feel like based on that, it was always sung around like Easter. So we're talking about Jesus dying on the cross, and I'd read this little devotional, this 40-day devotional that would talk about the 40 days, until the cross. And you read about the horrible, horrible things that Jesus went through. And then they start singing the song in church, and you're like, oh my gosh, like it's this idea of Jesus going through all these things that we didn't, that we're taught we deserved that death. And Jesus mercifully took our place and paid this terrible penalty. And not that all of that is false, but I view it through a different lens now of rather like Jesus came down and died the worst death to blow up the idea that death could defeat us. And then 3 days later was like, haha, you thought I was dead. Like, that's cute. Now nobody will eternally die. And so like this idea of Jesus just kind of literally blowing up the grave and being like, that has no power. Screw that. I love you. The end. And so rather than, kind of what you got to experience was rather than fix your eyes upon Jesus, of staring guiltily at Jesus taking your place on the cross, it became this way of you taking on the eyes of Jesus and looking through his eyes of love at all the things,
at me,
at you, of your story, of everything that you've been through, getting to look through Jesus's eyes and be like, oh, seeing the immense love with which he sees.
Yeah, that was a pretty cool moment, and it really helped me. So instead of looking up at Jesus thinking I'm not worthy, I fixed my eyes on being the eyes, like seeing, because Jesus said all throughout John how he came to remind us that we are one, that he and the Father are one, and we and him are one. So we're all one. Like, we all get to be, in this one ship, oneness. And so I finally was it, because I was carrying all this guilt and all this shame around my divorce, and being able to finally shift that perspective to see through the eyes of Jesus at me and at my choices and at my situation, and to look upon myself with compassion and love and mercy and grace and all the things that Jesus encompasses for us and has for us, and the ways that we're held together in that just shifted everything. And so, like, if we can somehow in these dark times remind ourselves, and I think I love the scriptures in the Old Testament where people were instructed to set up rocks or like create altars and stuff. The purpose was so that they would remember. So when they saw that visual thing, they would be like, oh yeah, I remember when God did something really cool. I remember when we got saved from that. And it was always a great story, Oh, I remember when that cool thing happened, or when that great thing happened, or when something shifted, or when, And so if we can set up these little reminders for ourselves somehow, to remind us of the perspective that we should have, to look on ourselves with love and to remember who we really are because who we really are doesn't change. Like we were formed in love, and that doesn't change. Like we didn't get to choose that, you know? Like I can choose how I behave while I'm alive, but I didn't get to choose how I was made. And I was made and formed in love. And so at the core of who I am, where I started was perfect. I didn't start like I don't ascribe to the whole like, what is it? Like you're born sinful or something.
Yeah,
what
create,
is
like born in a sinful nature.
Yeah, so if I can create some kind of moment for myself to remember that I was formed and created in love, then I can a little bit more accessibly, maybe is the right word, when I'm sitting over here in this dark part of my garden, maybe I can like a little more easily get to a different perspective. But it takes practice. I think we've talked in past episodes about the neural pathways and the brain and how it develops the pathways that it does. And I was going to put this in the guide, but felt like it got off topic. So I feel like it's a different guide to make for someone. But you know, from before we're born, actually, when we start developing and our brain starts growing is when those pathways are starting to be created, and up through about age 7, it's coming from external. So like we're not creating it ourselves. It's the things that other people speak onto us that is creating the neural pathways. And so that's kind of, and it's also, they've discovered that there are different stages of brain waves. So there's like alpha waves, theta waves, delta waves. And so some of them are more of like a hypnosis state. And that's actually age 0 to 7. The brain is in this kind of hypnotic brainwave state.
Okay.
And that's why the framework that the brain is building from age 0 to 7 is sort of set, because it's kind of a hypnotic state. So whatever's happening outside in is what's creating all that subconscious layering that's going on. And then from like 7 to 25, the brain isn't even fully developed till you're 25. And so from like 7-ish to 25, 7 to 12, you're kind of doing a lot of stuff. But like the brain kind of sloughs off a bunch of stuff at the age of 12, having to do with like hormone shifts and all those things. But yeah, so the brain just goes through these different stages of development, and they have different brain waves at different stages. And it's taking on different information based on what brainwave state it spends most of its time in. So we create this framework first, and then the next phase, we start looking for evidence. The brain starts looking for evidence to support the framework. So what you experience or how you interpret your experience, I'll say, the brain sort of takes an experience and says, okay, that match, I'm going to make that match this thing over here, this message of I'm not good enough, or depending on what you heard, 0 to 7. A lot of us hear, unfortunately, negative things like I'm not good enough, I got to do this to make mom happy, or to make dad not hit me, or like to make my dad love me if he's not there, or, like we just kind of create these things. The brain takes experiences and fits it into the framework. And so that's why when we're 25 and we start, like we enter this new sort of phase of the brain development or our life development, it's like we're able then at that point to look back and say, is that accurate? Is that true? We kind of shift into this different phase of life where we
can sort through everything and say, is that true or not? And what do I want? Do I want to create a new framework, basically? Can I learn a new framework? Can I build a new garden? Is really essentially what it is. And a new perspective, because the perspective I have had maybe is creating a lot of too many moments in the dark part of the garden that I don't want to be in.
Hey friend, pardon the interruption. I just wanted to give you a heads up that the Becoming Home podcast, a project from fullyabundantlife.com, is a free podcast. We don't monetize it, but we do ask that if it has encouraged you, if you've got some tools out of it, or if you just want to support Joe and I, run over to buymeacoffee.com/the Becoming Home podcast and buy us a coffee. It's really easy. It's really fun. Our coffee community there is growing, and we'd love to have you there. The coffees are $5 each. You can buy as many or as few as you want. But we did also start a membership site. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see back here what the site looks like when you find it. You'll see Joe and I's faces there in the front, a video clip there. But yeah, the membership site is going to be updated. We just started it, so we don't have a ton in there yet, but our plan is to put new content every month there that we don't put out anywhere else. So we, like last week, Joellen and I had a really great, just very generic conversation, and we recorded it, and we're not posting it. We're just going to have it in the membership site. So it was a pretty intense conversation about relationships and young marriage and difficulties, which actually we both are in a young marriage at this point. So it was a really intense, really beautiful conversation that found some really great stuff out of it. So we're going to put it there in the membership site, and that will be, where we keep some of those little more private, maybe a little more vulnerable things. So if you want to jump into the membership site and grab some more tools, grab some more content, or just show us that you support us and want us to be successful in this journey, we would really appreciate that. Thanks so much for your time. Thanks for listening to me ramble on about coffees. Now back to the conversation.
And so it's up to us as we become adults to create new framework. And part of creating a new framework is changing the perspective and being able to say, okay, I'm going to operate from this place over here instead, from love. And how do I do that? I'm used to this garden over here where it's easy for me to operate out of sadness, or it's easy for me to operate out of darkness or depression or anxiety or whatever, because I've done that a lot. What's not as easily second nature to me is to operate from a place of love. So I have to kind of develop new skills, and hopefully that's what people are getting out of the guide, is to step into a place of, okay, let me tell myself a different story. Let me create a new framework. Let me say, okay, I am created with confidence and clarity and compassion and caring and all these things. So let me sit in that place and look over at the situation from that perspective and ask, like, what do you need from me? Like, I like how you said earlier, talk to shame. Okay, shame, I see you. So in the guide, there's another exercise about how to do that, like how to really dig in, what questions to ask, how to kind of navigate a situation like that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's good stuff.
I was going to share because you were talking about kind of operating from this place of love. And I know sometimes people will just go through kind of longer seasons of like depression and darkness. And I know we talked a lot about some of those longer seasons that we've been through. Some people go through more cyclical phases. And I am now one of those people where I don't, my kind of big seasons of depression for the moment have taken a break, which is fine.
Nice.
But now instead I kind of go through a monthly depression cycle. And I've noticed, just because I go through it so often, I'm noticing differences kind of every month as we've kind of talked about this, and as I've really tried to work on it, because you go through a few months of 2 weeks of, man, I feel like trash. And you have 2 weeks where you're like, oh, life is great, couldn't be better. And then that next week hits, you're like, oh, I hate my life. Like, a few months of that, it's really probably been like a few years. And then you kind of realize, you're like, all right, let's do something different. Like,
yeah, I'm getting tired of this roller coaster.
Yeah, it's getting old. I want my marriage to feel stable when I feel like I'm going through this. You know, I want to not hate my family when I go through, you know, just whatever people are facing, like, that's real.
Yeah.
And as I've kind of created tools, the best thing I've done is take the opportunity while I'm in the light and put myself back in the shoes of the Joe who was in the dark, and be like, all right, what did she need? What did she need that she wasn't able to vocalize? Because maybe other people don't do this, but I shut down when I'm in the dark. I struggle to talk. I struggle to eat, drink, sleep, all the things. And my sweet husband wants to help, and he'll be like, oh, what do you need? What can I do? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just a mess.
I don't know.
So when I'm in the light and I'm having a great day, I love to look back at the dark and be like, all right, what did that Joe need?
Yeah.
What questions could she have been asked that would have helped her? What food would she have eaten that she could instruct Chris to provide? Please go get applesauce. I need chocolate. Like, whatever you need.
Yeah.
Get me flowers.
Yeah.
Like, how can I... And that was even something that you had brought in, was giving him a list of questions when I have a bad day. And so then it's gone even further to where I can even tools, what can I get for myself? All right, what do I know I'll eat? Let's write that down.
Yeah.
And the more you bring in tools in the light, the less dark the dark will be. Because now as I go through each month, I feel, I wouldn't say I feel less horrible, like it still sucks.
Yeah.
But I know what food I'm going to eat, so my stomach isn't empty.
Yeah.
And I know that I need more sleep. So I stop prioritizing getting up with my alarm. I snooze that sucker as many times as I need to. Like, all right,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
I do the essentials. I let myself slow down and work. That's scary. But because I own, not really own, but I own one business, and then we do the podcast together. I have control over 2 out of my 3, like, main focuses in life. Chick-fil-A, I kind of, I still work my 40 hours. I do my stuff, whatever. But the things I own, that I have ownership over, I really can control what I'm doing. And if I need to slow down, heck, we pull those reins back and we slow down.
Yeah.
But the only way I know that is because, I do this every month.
Yeah.
And then where you go through those things, you get used to what you need.
But here's the thing I want to champion for you, or hope that you champion in yourself, is that you recognize it because you're intentional about recognizing it. Like, there are years and years and years that I went through the same thing. It was very cyclical for me as well, but I just thought it was this, or thought it was that, or thought it was, I blamed all the external things instead of, like, I didn't have the skills, to sit and to sit with myself, because religion told me I was just being a silly girl.
Yeah.
Led by her emotions, and unspiritual and unstable. I was a double-minded man.
Oh, wow.
You know that one scripture, like a double-minded man, something like a double-minded man shouldn't think that he's going to receive anything from the Lord. Like,
well, men don't have cycles.
Man as far, not man, woman, but, human, a double-minded human shouldn't think they're going to receive anything. So, like, because I was in a religious system that would take verses like that and use them against me, I was never taught how to value my emotions.
Wow.
And how to treasure and learn from and befriend the dark side of my emotions. Because I feel like everything comes down to either love or fear, and, like, those are the two, like, if I'm so, like, I see a document There's like the title of the document, and then you have headings, and then you have subheadings. And so if the title of the document is life or me, like my name at the top, the next two headings are love and fear. And everything that I experience falls into some of the, one or both of those categories, or, they're right next to each other. So they always butt up against each other for me. And so I am just learning to be okay with all the feels, and like give space and give voice to all of them, because most of the time it's something that happened in that 0 to 7. If it's a quote dark emotion, it's a message or an experience that happened to me in that 0 to 7 time frame that created a framework that's misaligned with love, or can't quite see the message of love, or can't quite view myself from a place of love. I'm fixing my eyes on Jesus from a place of fear, looking up, instead of fixing my eyes on Jesus, within Jesus, where I actually am seated, and looking out at the world through the lens of love.
Thanks so much for joining us on the Becoming Home podcast. On behalf of Joe and myself, we want to thank you so much for investing your time here. Don't forget, you can head over to fullyabundantlife.com and grab more resources, grab a free guide on emotional processing tools. It's packed full of information over there. The guide has over 100 emotional words to help you identify exactly what you're feeling, more than just happy, mad, sad, grumpy, hungry, whatever. 100 words or more to help you really identify what's going on inside of you, so that you can really process that better. Exercises to process. It's giving tons of information, somatic, where the emotion may be trapped in the body. There's loads of information in that guide, all for free. So fullyabundantlife.com, you'll see it right when you click on that website. And then if you need other information, I've got tons of stuff there for you to grab. So head on over there. Thank you again for being with us. We'll see you next time.